All right, so you wanted to get into some like really practical gardening advice.
Yeah.
And so we're doing a deep dive today on something that seems really basic, but it's actually super important. And we're talking about pot size for your plants.
Yeah,
We always hear that bigger is better, but that's not always the case when it comes to pots. So we're going to explore all that.
exactly. And kind of the core question here is how can a pot that's too large actually be bad for your plant?
Hmm. Yeah, so let's get right into it.
Okay.
What is the downside of having a pot that is just way too big for your plant?
Well, the main thing is that you have too much soil,
Okay.
and that soil holds a lot of water. And when that water sits around the roots for too long, it can actually cause the roots to rot because they don't have access to oxygen.
Hmm.
One of the sources we looked at had this great quote, when the roots can't breathe, they rot.
Wow, yeah, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
Like suffocating them.
Exactly.
And if the soil is staying wet for so long, how are you supposed to know when to water it again?
That's a great point, because you might check the top of the soil and think, oh, this is dry.
Right.
But down below, it's still soaking wet, and that makes it really hard to judge when the plant actually needs more water.
Right.
And the other thing that can happen is that the plant might actually prioritize growing more roots to fill up all that space in the pot instead of focusing on growing leaves and stems above ground.
Ah, so it's kind of like putting a toddler in a California king bed, I guess.
Exactly. It has all this room to spread out, but that might not actually be what's best for its development.
Hmm.
So there are some telltale signs you can look for to see if your pot might be too big.
Okay, like what?
One of the biggest ones is if the soil stays wet for like a week or more after you water it.
Okay.
That's a pretty good indication that the pot's holding on to too much moisture.
Yeah.
Other signs to watch for are if the leaves start turning yellow for no apparent reason, or if the stems near the soil line feel kind of mushy. And also, if your plant just doesn't seem to be growing much, even though you're giving it all the right care, that could also be a sign that it's root bound in a too big pot.
Okay, so how do we find that sweet spot, the perfect pot size?
Well, a good rule of thumb is to choose a pot that's only 1 to 2 inches wider in diameter than the plant's existing root ball.
Hmm.
You know, that clump of roots and soil that you see when you take the plant out of its old pot?
Right.
This gives the roots enough room to grow without having too much extra soil around them.
Okay, that makes sense.
Now, there's a lot of different types of pots out there, so it can be confusing.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
like, what about those beautiful decorative pots?
Yeah, right.
Those are often best used as what's called a cache pot.
Okay.
So you keep your plant in a plain nursery pot with good drainage holes, and then just pop that inside the decorative pot.
Ah,
It's like a little pot inside a bigger pot, and that way you get the best of both worlds.
so the drainage is key no matter what kind of pot you use.
Exactly.
So we got to think about the material of the pot too, right?
Yeah, different materials behave differently when it comes to moisture.
Okay.
Terracotta pots are porous,
Right.
so they let more water evaporate, which can be good if you tend to overwater your plants. Plastic pots, on the other hand, hold on to moisture for longer, and then you also have to think about the shape of the pot.
Okay, so how does the shape make a difference?
Well, if you have a plant with really deep roots, like say a ficus,
Hmm.
then you might want to choose a taller, narrower pot so the roots have plenty of room to grow downwards.
Oh.
But if you have a plant with a more shallow root system, something that spreads out horizontally,
Yeah.
then a shallower, wider pot might be a better choice.
Wow, this is really interesting. I never thought about all these different factors.
It's really all about matching the pot to the specific needs of your plant.
So it sounds like our own watering habits should also play a role in what kind of pot we choose.
Absolutely. If you tend to underwater your plants, then a smaller plastic pot might be a good option because it will hold on to that moisture a little bit longer. But if you're more of an overwaterer, then a terracotta pot with a chunky, well-draining soil mix can help prevent your plant from getting soggy feet.
That makes sense.
It's all about finding the right balance for you and your plants.
So the big takeaway here is that when it comes to pots, bigger is not always better.
Definitely not.
The right size pot is so important for healthy roots and a happy plant.
Exactly. It's about creating a balanced environment where the roots can get the oxygen and moisture they need without being overwhelmed.
This has honestly changed how I look at my own plants, and I'm definitely going to be reassessing some of my pot choices.
Yeah, I think a lot of people will be surprised by how much of a difference the right pot can make.
So for everyone listening, I encourage you to think about your own watering style and the specific needs of your plants.
Yeah.
And ask yourself, are your current pots really the best fit, or could a simple change in pot size make a world of difference in their health and happiness?
It's a good thing to ponder.
Thanks for listening to this deep dive with us.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
We'll catch you next time.
See ya.